The story you are about to hear is true and heart-wrenching. We are a family of Maori origin, which also includes a variety of many mixed bloods. Our Maori heritage means a lot to us. We belong to a tribe, which is Ngāpuhi, and we also have a sub-tribe, which is called Ngāti Whātua. It all started in 1988. The year is unforgettable. Cyclone Bowler hit New Zealand around about March. That was the same time as my husband, Michael Monica, died. 1988 was the most horriblest years in my life. I'm not quite sure which one of the girls had their babies first. I think it was Karen. Karen lost Christopher, who was, I don't like saying deformed, or he was just not perfect.
Christopher was born in September 1988, and to actually give birth to a child that so many things wrong with him, it's really hard. I thought I was going to have a normal child, but then when he was born and there's so many things wrong with him, and then he, passed away about an hour after he was born, it was really hard to cope with. I had no idea that it was going to happen again.
I named him Lyndon, and Lyndon didn't survive at all. At birth, he died. It took a couple of months before I could even think about it, to try and get over it, and even to this day I'm not over it.
And then I got pregnant, and the same thing happened to me with William II. He was only in my world for 9 hours, but it was a good 9 hours to me. It was a long 9 hours, but yeah.
And that's when my dad, Chappie, also said that it was like a marker to a curse. That's when I heard it. I thought about it myself, but I didn't want to believe it. And I just brushed it aside. And then Dad said, why was it happening to him and his children, his grandchildren? What has anybody done? I was married in 1963. In those days, if you got pregnant, you had to marry the person to give the child a name. We got married in June, and I lost the baby in about September. It's very hard to describe, I suppose, that when you lose something, it's like losing your whole being. I never saw him. I didn't see Watty at all. So I've got no idea what he looked like. Unfortunately, I had 4 girls. The oldest being Phyllis. The second one is Karen. The third one is Shona. And 10 years later down the track, there was Nookie Jane.
You know what, we always get together and we always just end up laughing.
I think all it is when we start missing one another, then we start turning up at Mum and Karen's.
Well, every day, just non-stop talking.
For some. More families need to be
We've always been a close family, even with our, cousins, first cousins and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Always been close.
We're all like brothers and sisters, our cousins and all.
As you can see, this is only 1/16 of the family. When we're all together, it took a bus.
We laugh a lot.
Yeah.
When we get together.
Yeah. That's their way of getting over things. We were told by the doctors at the National Women's Hospital that it would never happen again in a million years. If you lose one, you get over it. But when you start losing 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 of them, you don't think that it's ever going to happen to you that many times. No?
When I had David, he came out with a smile on his face and a glow.
He knew his mother's touch. You know, I'd be rough with him, as little as he was and as fragile as he was, but he knew it was me.
Christopher's father sort of like pointed the finger. It's like, it's all your fault.
I was still very naive, still thinking that the baby would change, still come out perfect.
This is something that I wanted to treasure while I had him, because I knew I was going to lose him. Then when Philly and then Nookie, it's like, whoa, there's something up here. There's definitely something up. But we had no idea what.
Oh, I was starting to worry, what is wrong with us? What's happening to us? Why is it happening to us? What have we done wrong,
It wasn't until my grandfather said a particular word, makatu. I was like, oh, I know what that word means. That's not good.
Makatu is something that if you want to do something bad back to me, you would put this makatu on me and say, well, I would like her tongue to be tied up in knots. That's an example. And I would send it back, but not to you. I would send it to the weakest of your family or a child, because that's where everything hits home. For the love of me, just didn't think that it was makatu. I didn't have that feeling. I think if I did have that feeling, I think things could have got out of control. Then Stephen came on the scene. Professor Stephen Robertson.
Hold on tight! Yay!
At the time I had met June and her family, several of those boys had been born. No one had a firm diagnosis for them. My initial approach was couched very much in the terms that I would like to sort of try to find first a diagnosis, and then perhaps pursue the possibility of finding an answer.
Finally, somebody was going to do something about it. Somebody took the time out to care about what was happening to this Maori family.
Run for your life, Mark. Ready, steady.
I would describe myself, I suppose first and foremost, as a family man, really. You can't help going through life as a physician, and especially as a paediatrician, and not relating the experiences of the families you see with disease and disability and problems, and relating that back to your own experience as a father as well. Why paediatrics? I suppose it's because kids get better, and when they get better they show joy, and they get back to living life with such verve, such enthusiasm. You can't not want to deliver that for a young human being. And how's his appetite? You're heading for a position in the front row, aren't you, Nicholas, rather than half back? Sometimes you wonder how you would cope with the sorts of challenges you see other people negotiating, and you take quite some inspiration from what you see from your fellow human beings. The importance of what I do is divided into both being a physician and caring for people with disability and disease, and at the same time having the privilege to be able to explore those questions scientifically. That's one of the great joys of what I do.
I think Stephen came on board about 96. At the beginning I thought it was going to be real scary stuff, and why should we have to give out all this information? This is what was running in my head.
All I can remember about it is he wanted to look at our toes and our fingers. Yeah. And we wanted to take our shoes and socks off. So, yeah.
These little boys died because their skeleton was imperfectly formed. Their chest was too small. Their limbs were twisted. They had pieces missing. In meeting with June's family and examining her daughters, I wondered whether there might be subtle signs in the skeleton which might give me some indication as to their carrier status.
He just made you feel so comfortable, so relaxed, that you just wanted to tell him about your whole life, but he only wanted to know of certain things.
What we figured is that this family clearly had some kind of damaged gene that was carried down generations, carried silently by women, but seriously affecting males. To even begin to hope we could actually find the single gene fault in the genetic constitution of this family seemed to be a little bit of a dream. What drew me to the genetics? I think the fascination of it primarily. All the bits and pieces of what brings a human being about, what makes them grow the way they do, and how it goes wrong. In many ways, geographically, we've charted our world pretty well, but what are the mysteries that still lie around us? And one of them surely is how we get from being one cell big to being billions of cells big, and the complex, and I think engaging organisms we are. That's what I've chosen to scientifically pursue. Not just driven from that fascination, but actually having the added benefit of pursuing questions about disease for families that are afflicted by them.
My hopes, to tell you the truth, was that there wasn't any chromosomes, no affected genes, nothing. I just wanted it to be something totally different that could be fixed.
I think it would have been easy for them to say, no, I distrust this. This is research we've been almost experimented upon as a curiosity. But I think, as is true to their sort of spirit as people, as I've come to sort of get to know them, they decided that no, that's not the approach to life to take. This is an opportunity which could not only help us but help others. And they said that right from the start. Not just them, but also others. What leaps out when you meet a big family with a lethal disorder is that there must be something very special running through almost the life force of a family like that even something like this will not derail further generations. The whakapapa will not stop. That this thing can be lived with and life will go on. The condition's called oto-palatodigital syndrome, which is a very cumbersome medical name. In looking at June's family tree and wondering where this genetic condition started, the obvious person to think hard about was June herself. That there must have been some kind of change in her genetic blueprint right at her conception, which led to this disorder. Why these genetic changes happen in our constitution is still a little bit of a mystery. I think the most explainable mechanism by which they occur is just one of simple chance. Our genetic constitution needs to be replicated faithfully every time a cell divides in our body. You're changing 3 billion letters in a DNA code billions of times, and mistakes happen, and that's when mutations occur. The beginning point with June's family was knowing that their condition is what we termed inherited in an X-linked manner, which actually means that the physical location within the cell of this gene is on a body called the X chromosome. Now, chromosomes are sort of the physical embodiments of our genetic constitution. When you look down a microscope, you can see these things. There are 23 of them, and they come in pairs, and the X chromosome is one of them. And the X chromosome is special because it's different between males and females. It's paired with a Y in males, and there's only 2 X's with the female, no Y. When you inherit something that's defective on the X chromosome, you're very susceptible as a male. You only have an unpaired X and a Y which doesn't actually help you in compensating for that defect. But a female does. A female has 2 X's, so the second one can back up a defect on the first. And that explains why in June's family the females get away without any serious manifestations of this disorder by and large, and it's the males which get the severe disease.
But it's not all the boys that get this disorder. It's a 50-50 chance, a flip of the coin.
The female has a faulty chromosome and a non-faulty chromosome. So a female has a 50% chance of producing an affected son, if they're going to bear a son, or a 50% chance of producing a carrier daughter, if they're going to produce a daughter. In June's case, every time she conceived a daughter, that individual turned out to be a carrier, just by chance. Fortunately, some of them have been lucky enough to have healthy sons.
Boys in our family, they are precious in their own way because there's not very many of them.
My immediate family is my son, William. I love that kid. Yeah. He's come a long way. Anything was to happen to him, I don't know what would happen, you know. He's my world. I wanted to live on a farm and, you know, have a whole lot of kids running around. Yeah. That didn't happen. Joshua, when he was born, his birth and death was very different because he came into this world and stayed with us for 10 days, you know, and the first time I heard him cry at the hospital was like a little kitten meowing, you know, and that sort of broke my heart. And it was the first time we've ever heard one of our boys cry. First time ever. So, yeah. He was a very special angel, that guy. Just tiny, you know. It felt I had to bring my arms up a bit closer because he was so tiny. He was only 3 pounds of butter. You know, that's how big he was. When he lived for those 10 days, I thought he was going to make it, you know. 10 days was like a lifetime. I wanted more, I really did, but I didn't want to go through that again. You know, how many do I have to bury before I can have a normal childbirth or a normal child?
While we were working on this condition, children were added to that family and affected boys were born and died. It really sort of hit home that life was going on for that family. We needed an answer, and that's where a lot of the motivation came from. We'd found this incredible clue that told us a rather localised part of this X chromosome housed our answer, and I spent all my years in Melbourne working very hard looking at that part of the chromosome, guessing and wondering where it might be. It does enter into your mind that, oh gosh, you might be so lucky as to actually find the thing. Professor Andrew Wilkie was someone I only knew by name when the whole issue came up that we should try and engage a good scientist. Andrew was one of the very best researching physician scientists in clinical genetics in the world. His colleagues jokingly refer to him sometimes as the brain of Britain.
The first I heard from Stephen was a fax which mentioned that he'd got this family with a condition and he was looking for someone to do a little bit of genetic work on it. I thought this looked like a couple of weeks' work. So little did I know that 5 years later Steve himself would be in the lab to work on this himself.
When the opportunity to go overseas to Oxford came, and Andrew was very keen for me to go, it was a dream come true. So I remember the day I pitched up here to the front door and saw it for the first time, and it was exciting, yeah. To come here and to meet with people like Andrew Wilkie and to work with them, some of the best scientists in the world in molecular medicine, was a real thrill. How big was the magnitude of the task? We were potentially looking for a single misspelling, a single drop of a letter in the genetic code. If you sort of think of our genetic constitution as an encyclopedia set, it's got all the knowledge and instructions that you require to make a human being within it. And there are 23 volumes, as in 23 chromosomes. We didn't have to bother with 22 of those volumes. We knew the X chromosome must have the answer, but it's still a very thick volume. And we need to find not only the chapter, not only the page, but we need to find a spelling mistake on that page. And so that's the challenge, finding a spelling mistake in a very thick book. We were looking for a needle in a haystack. And at the same time, though, it seemed with persistence and some doggedness, luck would turn our way.
The years that Stephen was in Oxford was really horrible because, to me, he wasn't close enough. Like, if anything, we needed him for an emergency, although he kept in touch with us. He was always ringing up.
Inevitably, when we phoned up, there would be more than a natter, yeah. The phone bill sometimes slipped another decimal point. But they were always great conversations, and extremely honest. In researching these issues for a Maori family, I had to be very sensitive to issues, not just the fact that we had some of their DNA, some of their genetic material, but also I was forever dealing with pictures of their offspring, pictures of those little boys, pictures of them.
Not once did any of the girls say, I don't want this to happen, I don't care.
When Christopher was born, they wanted to take samples from the umbilical cord, and I was like, okay, yeah, you do it, you go for it, I give you consent. If it means, finding things out, yeah, that's not a problem.
Sometimes I used to get nervous about, say, publishing a photograph, and I'd ring up June and I'd say, look, I know this is very sensitive, are you sure, you're happy for me? And it was always unquestioning. In the next breath, of course we are. The X chromosome is a large chromosome. It's one single molecule of DNA that's incredibly long. DNA is made up of letters, one after the other, a bit like one long sentence. And the X chromosome sentence has over 150 million letters to it. And spread out over those letters are 1,200 genes. Some in clusters, some sparsely separated from one another. There was a 2 million letter long piece of the X chromosome we knew the answer lay within, and there are about 60 genes in there, and one of them was the gene we were after. A gene is a bit like a biological computer program. It sits by itself and it specifies a function. If there's a mistake in that program, just a missing letter or a missing code or a missing piece of punctuation, that program will stop. We were picking off a priority list of ones which could reasonably be potential candidates and excluding them one by one. We could make definitive statements about areas where the thing is not. We just hadn't found out the place where it was.
We talked about the progress he was making, and I just said to him, you're getting any closer? And he'd say, well, I thought I was, but I'm not. So I've got to start all over again.
It was a roller coaster. There were also false alarms where we thought we'd found it, or we're about to find it. But indications looked strong, and they were roller coasters too. Andrew Wilkie and I used to talk about time frames, when we would begin to sweat, and when we would just maintain our nerve. As the first year ticked by and the second year ticked by, and I still hadn't nailed this thing, I used to get a bit down. And yeah, Not to stop me working, but I certainly used to get a bit glum about prospects. The only possibility was that I could let down this family by actually giving up. And I wasn't going to do that. The last 6 months were a very, very busy time when I was working 7-day weeks, not infrequently. Days that stretched into the evening as well. Once the children were in bed, I'd be back to the laboratory.
I have 2 kids, Shay and Zinnia. Shay's 6, Zinnia's 5. I want children. I don't. 2's not enough, you know. My kids give me grief every day, but they're good at the same time. You share memories, you share pain, you share laughter, you share, you know, just more fun. I want quite a big family. I said to Mum, when I do get pregnant again, I won't tell you unless the baby is healthy. And if the baby isn't healthy, well, unfortunately I'll have to go it alone because you're never going to know. And Mum goes, well, who's going to drive you home from the clinic, huh?
If baby is affected, it affects all of us because you're not going to be the one that's going to go up to the cemetery by yourself and bury the child, are you?
I couldn't go through that again. I mean, apart from the fact that I've got 3 kids anyway, and I just don't want any more. I think 3 is enough. But I just don't want to go through that again.
I want another 4 more. Yeah.
No way.
Yeah, I do. But I'll cut it down to 2 more.
2?
Yeah. Mum, she's the one who puts a lot of the blame on herself. She puts so much burden on herself in regards to how Philly, Karen, Shona and I have lost our boys to this genetic condition. Her belief may be that it's actually the curse that's done this to her, plus us. Maybe we are being punished for something, I don't know. Maybe something in the family did happen.
Well, I promise that if ever I accidentally fell pregnant, that my older sister, Philly, who I think, you know, she's wanted lots and lots of kids, but she's only got 1, and she's lost 2. So I thought if I ever got accidentally pregnant, that I would let Philly legally adopt the baby.
I'm in line for the next one if she accidentally gets pregnant twice.
It's not going to happen.
It is a long way from West Auckland. It was always a particularly difficult time to know that another pregnancy was perhaps up and underway, or another baby had been born, either with the problem or in Ria's case, affected to some degree but still alive. It certainly put it back into perspective.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you.
Ria's very special. Her full name is Ria Anahera, and Anahera means angel. Philly gave her that name because that's what she thinks she is. She's just a little angel, and she is. I think she's lucky to be here. I'm lucky to have her.
You only want half, eh?
Ria's a complex case. She's an exception to the rule. For a reason that we only partially understand, in some ways she's a bit of a halfway house, genetically, between a male who manifests the whole disorder and a female who only manifests it silently.
She's a pretty cool kid, and that doesn't worry her. You know, she, being an asthmatic, she plays sports, she plays netball, which she really enjoys. I mean, most of the time they're just standing there with their hands up in the air anyway, but she still likes it.
2 plates.
2 plates. Not wrong. Have we got 2 hair ties? But she's a real trooper. She marches on. It just doesn't worry her at all. Even though that she, you know, she's wearing hearing aids, that's not a problem to her. Ria reminds me of Christopher in a big way because, I mean, I can still see Christopher's face now, you know, his tiny little face. Because I don't know what Christopher looks like now, Ria's helped me sort of get a mental picture of what he could look like. Yeah.
I've got one. Okay, take yours.
Options of where this gene might be were beginning to run low. There was one particular gene I hadn't looked at yet, a gene that had already been associated with a completely unrelated condition characterised by epilepsy.
The gene was not really one we thought was going to be a player. But I began to think of inventive ways where it might be, and so began to look at it. I ran the first set of experiments, and there were some suspicious changes that had come up. But we'd had our false alarms, we had fallen into this trap before. I kept a cold and sober head and planned to do the resulting experiments subsequently. When those results rolled through about a week later, there was something very, very suspicious there. Still not cast iron proof, but something that looked very deeply suspicious. Enough so that I stopped everything else and concentrated on this one gene. I ran the critical experiment. Required a run into an evening, that experiment. I set it going and I went off to watch some football, I think, on the television with some friends. This was February in Oxford, and cold and dark. Then after spending the evening with my friends, I was on my bicycle heading home, and I decided to just drop in just to see how the experiment was running. It was a little on my mind, you might say. And it was round about midnight, and I put this experiment under the analyzer, and there was the answer. Unequivocally. Found it. It is like being an explorer. It's setting eyes upon something that no other human mind has set their eyes upon and understood, at least to a limited degree, and understand it. Not out of cleverness, actually, but out of the help I got from June and her family and multiple other families, from the help I got from Andrew Wilkie, and from just a bit of sheer sort of doggedness, not giving up. What we found here was quite clearly something quite central to human development, something not suspected to be this way up until this point. That we had a gene on our hands which seemed to explain diverse abnormalities of development meant that our story got a lot of scientific press. The signal is, from your scientific peers, that this is a big deal. When I look at what we've discovered during this project, that a single DNA letter code out of that 3 billion letters can lead to this profound disability, profound disorder. It's staggering that nature not only has that size, but at the same time has that precision to go awfully wrong. I flew to Auckland very soon after I got back, and we met around a table in Auckland. June brought along some of her family, some of her maukapuna. I told them very specifically what we had found. Then I showed them the paper we had published.
So all we heard was medical breakthrough. I was thinking, okay, medical breakthrough, what's this? He's got something really cool. And then, I mean, it took him a while to tell us. You know, we're sitting there having bickies and tea and that. And by the time he actually did say something, I think all the bickies were just about gone.
I can't remember how he told us his exact words, but it was just like a weight that had lifted off my mind.
After all these years of people telling you that, it's your fault, you just realise it's not. And it's just a medical thing.
It was like a big relief to me because it was like there's no tapu on our family, you know. Nobody's got anything against us. It's just misfortune.
All of the suspicions of the marketu just went straight down the toilet. because if it's a genetic thing, it has got nothing whatsoever to do with makatu.
I remember hearing for the first time from June the word makatu in person. She had used it over the phone, but it really hit me in the face, seeing the relief upon her face in the context of the use of that word. That somehow a curse, or what members of her family had seen as a curse, now had a name and a face.
I love Stephen like a brother because he's doing a lot of things that nobody else would even bother about.
He's been part of our family for a long time.
We met a long, long time ago. A long time ago. You wouldn't remember. I don't think you would. You were about 3. How old are you now?
7.
7. I've got a boy who's 7, you know.
Oh, look at all the muckas we've got. Just these 3 little horrors. Little.
Kia ora, thank you very much for the welcome. Thank you very much for the hospitality. This has been a day that I've looked forward to for a long, long time. June and I have spoken many times about family, of course. I'm a geneticist. I understand about family, at least in some kind of way. And in speaking to June and her family about the things which have been plaguing them, troubling them, she's always naturally spoken back, not about just the generations which are living, but the generations which have gone past as well. It's wonderful to be on your ground at long last, to be surrounded by family, both past and present, and to say these words as a geneticist who is every working day dealing with families all the time. It really is a very poignant moment. Thank you. Kia ora.
Have you ever eaten wild pork?
I don't think I ever have.
What kind of macaque are you?
Have you been to wild pigs down there?
Anyone?
Only wild women.
This thing gets silently carried through the female line, and June looks at her granddaughters and wonders, will they suffer the same pain I did, or suffer the same pain I watched my daughters suffer? And what we can deliver for this family is not just an understanding, not just a name. We can now do a blood test on those young women, if they wish it, and we can tell them that yes, they do carry the gene change, or no, they don't. For those who do, they're still faced with the hard choices the generations before did, but there will be a proportion of them that will learn that they don't have the gene fault, and that this thing will never blight their children or ancestors after them.
It goes from Nan to our mums, and then it might go to us.
Well, they don't know. They have to have this blood test now to find out whether they have got it or not.
But do we have to take the blood test?
Not necessary, but when you get older, you'll start thinking, then that's when you will go and have it done. I might not be here.
If we do have babies, like it could pass away for like only live for like a few hours or something like that. Yeah. Yeah.
What, boys or girls?
Boys.
Boys. Ah.
I think about AJ's future when it comes to the time when she wants to have children. I mean, I worry about it all the time. Whether she'll be able to cope been told that she's not going to have a normal child, you know. I worry for her for that.
Knowing what you guys know, is that going to put you off having kids or not? There you go. That's the answer I wanted to hear. Can you girls stop being teenagers for a minute? All but 2 of the boys are buried here, which makes it kind of special for us to all be here at the same time.
Te mātou kai whakaora ai hukaiti. Ia ora tātou.
You mean the babies?
Yeah, they'd be, well, in the second they'd be 15 and Joshua would be 13. Way older than you.
I had this dream about Christopher and he was about 8 years old, and he was holding my grandfather's hand and he was surrounded by his uncle, Uncle Mike, plus Uncle Mick, which is Nookie Jane's dad, and they all passed away. And they were holding his hand. It's like they were letting me know that he is okay and he's been looked after. And it just meant a lot knowing that Christopher been looked after by them.
It's been a long time, son. Very long time. And that's where his brothers lay.
So it's a very special moment to be up here and be amongst the ancestors of old and the little spirits that have been put here to rest. Understanding why these things arise, why genetic disease happens, that it has to start somewhere. As a geneticist, you see it all the time. Why me? Why my family? Why my child? I think there's a stark biological answer. And that is that our genetic constitution's fragile. We as life forms are fragile and mistakes happen. But that, I think, is only the partial answer. I think humanness has to be acknowledged as being much more than DNA. So when that question gets asked to me by any family, I say that in many ways in your own heart you have to arrive at an answer that only you know is the right one for you. But I do think science helps. I do think putting the name on the thing helps them with that process.
That'll do. You reckon that'll do?
Yeah.
We all love the boys and we're all there for each other, and it'll go on till the day I die, and it'll carry on with them. The sadness is still there. Would have been, the boys, the first 3, they would have been 15 now. I'd love to see what they, were like.
Whakarongo ki te ata